If you want to build bigger glutes, then this video is for you. I'm going to talk you through 5 of what I consider to be the best glute exercises, not the best glute exercises because it's always case dependent. It depends on a number of things like your particular goal. If you're going purely for aesthetic reasons or if you're doing it for sports performance, but luckily they kind of go hand in hand anyway. But disclaimer, I actually think hip thrusts are a good exercise, but a lot of people don't. They're the obvious exercise to talk about. So I'm going to give you 5 different options that work really, really well. The thing about hip thrusters is that they get you into hip extension, and the hardest part of the lift is in the lockout at the top. And as we know, based on the latest research, and it's not all that matters, but it really matters that you get a lot of tension in the stretch position. So when you think about things like squats, leg press, lunges, RDLs, the glutes are under a lot of tension when they're their longest length. Whereas hip thrusters, the most tension is when they're in the shortest length. But again, it's not to say you shouldn't do hip thrusters. I do think they're a great exercise because if you get better at hip thrusters and the numbers go up, there's just no way that you're not going to get better glutes as a result. The first exercise I'm going to talk about is a Romanian deadlift. Simple to set up. It's not simple to get the movement, but if you get it right and you do it safely, it's highly effective. And all you need is a bar and some plates. You take the bar, be very careful if you're not lifting it off a rack and you're picking it up off the floor. If you've got big enough plates, the 18-inch 450mm plates, use them if you're going to pick it up off the floor. If you're going to deadlift it off the floor like a conventional style just to get it up in the first place, that's going to look a little bit different to an RDL. Make sure you get your bum down nice and low and use your quads to pick it up. So sort of leg press the floor away. And once you get the weight up, just focus on looking ahead at a spot in front of you, probably straight in front of you or slightly downwards. By keeping your head at that kind of angle, it's going to minimize the chance of you unnecessarily rounding your spine. Always take a big deep breath and brace at the top. Pull your shoulders back, squeeze your lats as hard as you can. And when you push down, just push your glutes and knees back as far as you can so you really stretch your hamstrings and glutes out. Of course, this is a great hamstring lower back exercise. It works your glutes extremely hard too. Just make sure that you brace super hard, thinking about keeping your lower back straight. And then once you push back to the point where you're not going to be able to go any lower without rounding your back, bending your knees more, which would start to use your quads, then you just squeeze your glutes as hard as you possibly can, like you're trying to crack a nut in there, re-brace, reset at the top, and go again. As I said, this is just an absolutely amazing exercise for your glutes, but also for pretty much every muscle in the back of your body. Start light, work up to it, and just make sure your knees go back too. If your legs bend too much, it's going to become more quaddy. The next exercise I'm going to talk you through is a Bulgarian split squat. All split squats and lunges are good, but there's a big difference between lunging forward and lunging backwards. If you lunge forwards, it's obviously quite a quad dominant exercise. Whereas if you step back, depending on where your knee is, if you push your knee right back so that your glutes get a really big stretch, and then think about thrusting your hips forwards and up using your front leg, trying to use your glutes, then that's a brilliant exercise. But if your knee goes too far forwards, it can become kind of like a leg press on the front leg, which is still going to use your glutes. Doesn't use your hamstrings very much. It does use them, but the thing is with a split squat, especially in this sense, is that as you push your bum back, you're stretching your hamstrings at the top end, but they're shortening at the quad end. Your hamstrings are sliding backwards and forwards. So just make sure that you take a big step out, push your bum back nice and far. Like I said, think about thrusting your hips forwards, but keep it nice and controlled. And always aim for a deep stretch, even if you have to lighten the weight. Another absolutely brilliant quad exercise, leg press. Now, again, the leg press, it does use your quads a lot. It does use your glutes a lot because it gets you into deep knee flexion. Obviously, because your knees are coming so far back close towards your chest, you're getting this massive stretch in your glutes. But if your feet are too low down on the plate in front of you, then the quads can become quite involved. So make sure that you put your feet up nice and high. How wide you go is personal preference, but if you went super wide, it can shorten the range slightly, but I couldn't go as deep if I put my feet too close together. So play around with it and just make sure you're getting your knees as far back as you can to get a big glute stretch, but just watch that your lower back doesn't start to round and your bum comes away from the seat. One of the beauties of a leg press is that you can push your hips up against the seat, which takes all the weight off your lower back. The minute you go too low and your knees come too close to your chest, which some people can do, but most people will find actually their bum's coming away from the seat and it's shifting the weight from their hips onto their lower back. So be very careful of that one. The next exercise I'm going to talk about is the dumbbell step ups or step downs even. And there are a lot of ways to do this, but if you want to make it a really glute dominant one and thinking about that glute stretch, if you take a dumbbell, you're going to have to hold on to something to brace. There are different ways to do this, but if you want to make it a glute dominant one, you're going to need to hold on to something really. And the reason is, for one, we're trying to work on your strength, not your stability, although it will help stability and balance. But if you really think about pushing your bum back, you wouldn't be able to go back far enough to get a big glute stretch without bracing onto something with your other hand, because you'd have to push off the calf on your back leg. So what we're going to try and do is hold on to something, hold the dumbbell in the opposite hand to the leg that's going forward first, which is called contralateral loading. If you did it on the same side, it's called ipsilateral. They're both good, but generally I'd recommend holding it in opposite hand to the leg that's going forward first. And then you just want to make sure that the steps are nice and high so you can get a big stretch, but it's not so high that you can't touch down properly, because we're going to try and reach back with our tiptoes and lightly tap the floor as far back as we can to get the big glute stretch. And then again, like the Bulgarian split squats, we're going to use our glutes on the working leg, and we're going to kind of thrust our hips up and forwards. But again, not pushing forwards on your calf from your back leg, because that would be cheating. That's not what we're trying to do. The easier you make it for yourself, you're just going to lift more weight for more reps. So we just want to pick a weight that's heavy enough to really work the target muscle, the glutes in this case. If you put the bench too far back from the thing you're bracing on, then you're going to have to really stretch to reach it. So you don't want to be too far back away from it. If you're too close, it's going to make it a bit awkward. So just set the bench at a height where you can sort of hold it at chest height before you get on it, step up onto the bench. And then, as I said, with one leg, just push your foot back as far as you possibly can, lightly tap your toes on the floor as if your phone was on the floor and you're trying to touch the screen with your foot, but you don't want to put your weight on it and break it, if that makes sense. The last exercise we're going to discuss is a sideline glute medius kickback. By kneeling on a bench, we set a bench at 45 degrees. I'm going to put it quite close to the thing that I'm going to hold on to brace against. I guess you could do it without bracing onto something, but it's going to make it a lot more awkward, and you're going to have to really work your core hard to actually do it, which is not the goal of this exercise. So by putting the bench alongside the cable so that the cable is going to be able to run parallel down the side of the bench, then I'm going to kneel on it, grab whatever I'm bracing onto, could be a squat rack or whatever it is, and I'm going to turn my hips so they're kind of facing upwards, so they're facing side on towards where the cable's coming from. If I twist my hips towards it, it's going to become more like a sort of normal kickback, which is a brilliant exercise, by the way. But in this case, we're trying to use the glute medius and minimus, which are the small muscles in your bum, the shelf above your glute maximus to the side to give you that shelf look. By keeping our body sort of twisted to the side, bracing on, and then with a cable cuff, we're going to let our legs stretch right in towards the cable, and we're going to bend our knee at the bottom as well. If you don't bend your knee, you're not going to get the big glute stretch. So let your foot come close to the machine and make sure that as you kick out, you keep your body still and you keep your toes pointing downwards. If your toes aren't pointing downwards, it means that you've probably twisted your hips too far outwards. And then if your toes point upwards, it means you're going to start using your quads, which is going to take away from the actual target muscles, which is your glute medius and glute minimus. Just watch the video for reference and just make sure that your body is in that correct position, because the smallest detail can take away from the actual target muscle. You see it all the time. And again, it's going to injure you or anything. It's just not going to do what you're setting out to do, which is external hip rotation and getting a nice stretch in your glute minimus and glute medius. So I hope that will make sense. As I said, I'm not saying these are the best 5 glute exercises. I'm just saying they're really good exercises if you want to build nice rounded glutes. There are other brilliant exercises too, but these are just 5 non-hip thruster exercises. And as I said, hip thrusters are brilliant too, but that's a video for another day. So if you found this useful, drop a comment or send me a DM and I'll send you my free glutes program, which does include hip thrusters, by the way, because they're a great exercise. But again, this is just a blueprint of things you can do that are going to really work your glutes hard, and exercises can be swapped out and it can be made to work for the equipment that you've got. As always, please comment, like and follow if you want to see more useful videos. I'm going to be doing a whole series of these on different body parts, so stay tuned.